Okay, I came back here now, so wanted to go ahead and let's zoom all these. Kind of didn't succeed there here. So kind of align these all up so we can see where my lights are. Now, if you compare them to the sketch on page 1235, they should kind of look similar. Okay, again, those lights on the illustration were kind of faint. So let me go ahead and render this. I want to see what I got. So it didn't affect it. Didn't kind of blow anything out. Looks kind of good. So we can go ahead and proceed to the next step, which is I'm going to have to add now an atmospheric light. Again, I forgot something. Okay, so now I need to tell you what I forgot. Okay, so let's select one of these lights. Choose Q, select the light. I'm going to go to the modify here, and I want to modify the intensity. Now let's say everything is just too bright and too uniform, which it kind of looks like it is. So the way to bring down the intensity on some of these lights is to bring down the multiplier. So usually when I set up a camera, and let's say I'm using 3-point lighting for an interview, I usually set the camera on the opposite side of the key light. So kind of keep that in mind as you're setting up your cameras, that you don't want everything necessarily uniform. It depends on the look that you're going for, but you maybe want to have a little bit of differentiation in there. So I'm just going to go ahead and adjust my lights. Notice that if I adjust my lights, I can see that I'm affecting my image here. Okay, and notice that if I go negative, see, I'm really affecting it. What the negative does is, interestingly enough, is it sucks light out of the scene. So I'm going to want this backlight hot here a little bit, so I'm going to actually drive it up a little bit more. And this light, it's at 64. The bottom light, I'm going to keep it at 1 right now. Let me just take a render, see what I got. It's okay. I can still work on it, so we're still, I still have to tweak it some more. Okay, the next step is we're going to add a little interest here with the lights. So the author asks us to create a lens effect off of one of these lights, and I think this is the one he's asking us to. The light is going to, what we call in practical terms, practical meaning if I have a CG element, computer generated, well then obviously that's a CG element. If the light is actually a light source on a set, where it is a true light that I have to plug in the wall, that's a practical. Okay, it's not a CG light, or it's not a light that is a studio light, like a Mole Richardson light or like an ARRI light. A practical light is like let's say in the scene we have a lamp post, and the lamp post has a lamp on it, and it will be seen in the scene. That's a practical. So again, we're trying to emulate. So when a practical or any other form of light affects the camera lens, we call it the lens taking a hit, and it's usually a lens flare. That's kind of what the author wants to emulate here as well. Okay. So what we do is we go down to the Modify tab, we select the light, go to the Modify tab, and the atmosphere and effects here in this window, we want to add a lens effect. Okay, so we want to add a lens effect, and no, we want it all. Okay, lens effect. Say okay, and notice how it added it here. Once it's added, we want to go to setup here. Okay, and this window pops up. So now we want to go down here to glow. Now we have the light still selected. Say glow and add that to this window. Now I'm going to give you a warning real quick. Try not to mess with these globals. It's the lens effects globals. Now I have already messed with those by accident, and so I may not get the results that I want, but I'll have to come back and tweak those. So for the time being, I'm going to go ahead and minimize that. There we go. And I'm going to go to the glow effect, because that's what I'm working on here. And I want to change the intensity on the globe. And this is now according to page, let's see, 1235, at the very bottom, step 9. I want to go to the size. I want it size 10. And intensity, I'm sorry, the intensity is 150. I got to learn how to read. And the size here should be 10. I thought that was kind of wacky, but, you know, so I'm just going to take a look at it by rendering it out. Okay, notice that. This kind of glowy here on your light. So let's go ahead and move to the next thing, which is I'm going to include array. Go back up here to the lens effects parameters and add array. Same thing. Try to avoid the globals. Now the ray elements have popped up here. Okay. So you want to go to the size, which is now 50, and intensity, which should be set to 10, I think. And the number of rays is 50 as well. And notice this angle here. Hopefully that we have a chance to animate this and your rays can maybe revolve around your light. So again, you know what? Our light was not selected. So hopefully, I think we're still okay because we're still dealing with the same one. Let's take a render on this. Yeah, there we go. Okay, we have our streaks. So it remembered. Okay. So speaking of animating, I guess the author wants us to go ahead and animate it now. So let's go to, well, the easiest way here is set at 0, and I set to auto toggle, and we'll go ahead and that'll be the initial keyframe, but I'll have to check it. Then all the way, we zoom all the way to the end here, and I'm going to drive, or just go ahead and type it up. I could have driven it up or typed it, and now this little red box here shows that we've set a keyframe at the end. Okay, it should be at 0, and I'm scrubbing through and all the way to 180. Okay, so when I render the animation, you're going to see that the effect, the rays rotate. Now we're going to go ahead and place a ring in for this this light. So let's select ring and let's add it to the stack. And let's see, let's go ahead, and now we're under the ring parameters here. And the ring size should be set to 3. Kind of small compared to where the default was 75. And the intensity is 15. So it's going to be a subtle ring. And let's take another render of that just to make sure that we're okay. Yeah, look, that looks real subtle back in there. Looks good. So bail out of there, and I can just go ahead and close this window. I just want to make sure that I don't have any other parameters I need to change. So close that out. Okay, our next task is to now create an atmospheric effect on this particular light right here, this one right on top of the world, and it's going to be more or less a star effect. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and add atmospheric effects again. Oops, it was too quick. Anyway, I'm going to add lens effect, say okay, and now we're going to go setup again, highlight it, setup. Okay, there we go, setting up on this light right there. And the first thing we need to add is a glow effect. Make sure that our globals are shut down here so I don't accidentally touch them. So I want to go to glow, add the glow, come back in here, and the size is going to be 3, and the intensity is going to be 150. It's going to be kind of bright. And then the next effect is going to be a ray, and now the ray parameters have come up. So the size is going to be 10, intensity is going to be 30, and the number of rays are going to be 10. So not a whole lot of rays coming out of there. Finally is a star effect, and the star effect parameters now appear here, and the size is going to be 10, intensity is 50. It's a little brighter than the default, or twice as bright, and the width is going to be 1 even. Okay, and doesn't look like we need anything else, so I'm just going to go ahead and render that, see what we got. Okay, so it looks a little thick on the lines, but you can come back and change that if you wanted to. I think I might change it just before I move on. Okay, as you can see, I modified this. I made it a little thinner. I used the width of a 0.5 rather than the, what did they want us to do? The thickness for the star effect was width at 1, so I actually cut that in half. Looks a little better. Okay, now what they're asking us to do is animate that star effect. So I'm going to highlight that and take a look at the angle here. I'm at keyframe 1, and that's good. I'm going to jump all the way over to keyframe 100, and I'm going to set this to 90. So scrub through just to make sure that it changes. Yep, goes from 0 to 90. Okay, right there. So when I render this animation, that should be turning as well as the ring. Next step is to go ahead and clean my space up here a little bit. Next step is to add a spotlight underneath here. Okay, so what I'm going to do is lift that up a little bit. And in the front viewport, I'm going to create a light. Under the standards, I'm going to use a spotlight, not a targeted. Well, yeah, in fact, I am going to make a targeted spotlight. Now, the difference between a target and a free is that oftentimes you have a little helper object. Now, you notice that I'm using the helper object to point at the globe itself. Okay. So now I can go ahead and change the intensity of this light, and the author asks us to. Well, actually, the intensity he doesn't address, but he's talking to us about now the hot beam and the fall-off field. Okay, whoops. Now, let me talk to you a little bit about a couple of things here that I'm noticing in the in this window. Here we have near attenuation and far attenuation. What that does is not all lights cast light forever. They kind of start out at your flashlight and then kind of die off somewhere out in the distance, and that's what the far attenuation does for you. Okay, and I think we actually deal with that here in this exercise. And let's see, spotlights, hotspot beam. This is where I want to go to the spotlight parameters, and we have to change this to hotspot beam of 25.3. And now watch it change. There we go. The hotspot is within this area, okay? And now we're going to include a fall off, which is 30. Now what's the fall off in the hotspot beam? What that is that, again, using your flashlight analogy, it's not a solid, hard light. The core of the light is kind of solid and, well, intense. But then as you radiate from the center of the beam, it kind of falls off and becomes softer, you know, and that's exactly what you're trying to emulate here. So let me go back to this window and type Q in there, and let me take a render, and we could see our light up here, our lens effect, and I think I have that in the wrong spot, and I'll change it, but I'm not really seeing a whole lot of kick from this light underneath here. So I want to change this before too long. Move that up over there and over there. Okay. Now I'm going to have to deal with this particular light.